It's been a few years since the release of the current Rolex Submariner. In 2022, versions were launched, the one with the green bezel and the standard black one. The green one, nicknamed Starbucks, hit the algorithm of hype, but now, is the hype dead? I'll start with my hands-on impressions, likes, dislikes, and then we'll get into whether the hype is dead. Before that, if you're interested in this piece or any other watch from Hong Kong, shoot me a message. So from the get-go, I've got to say that I really like this watch. It's my pick from the three green Submariners. I like it because it's somewhat subtle. The green bezel has got a wonderful dark luster thanks to its shade and the ceramic construction. The natural comparison you draw to this piece is with its predecessor, the Hulk. Now, I've got no issues with the Hulk other than the fact that it's too easily spotted. This piece is a lot more muted in comparison to that because of the dial being black. Now, this watch isn't any hidden secret gem. It's not unrecognizable, but it requires a second glance to know exactly what it is, and I prefer that. The Submariner is one of the most perfectly dimensioned watches in terms of in-hand feel and on-wrist presence. It's hard to give this watch anything other than praise because of how well it's constructed. Everything is so tightly made and it feels really wonderful on the wrist. It sits perfectly well. Interacting with this watch is such a pleasant, easy and precise feeling. It's really hard to compare this with most watches. Additionally, the brushed steel has such a smooth, butter-like texture to it, and it feels almost soft in nature. Now, is there anything I dislike about this piece? Well, no, not really. I would just like this to be able to be optioned with a different clasp to the double fold-over safety clasp. I understand this is a dive watch, and that's a wonderful clasp with the glide lock, and it's the most secure mechanism for a dive watch. But for the average person buying this watch, no one's taking this diving. And it would be much nicer to be able to open the clasp with one smooth motion instead of flipping over one part of it and then unlocking the rest of it. But that's just really a personal preference and me sort of nitpicking. I really do think this is one of the most perfectly made watches. I think this is as perfect as a dive watch can get. If you want something more interesting, cooler, then you go for the SD43. That's a little bit thicker. I like the red text on that dial. Actually, that would be pretty cool. A green bezel with red text on the dial. That combination would be rather nice. Now to answering why the hype is dead on this piece. Or is it? Well, if you ask me, it is. And that's mainly reflected by the values at which this watch is trading relative to the regular Submariner. So the black dial, black bezel Submariner. The premium of this watch is about $500 to $1,000 at the very max. And that's a long way away from what it was a few years back. So if these two pieces are so close in price, it really does indicate that there isn't too much preference for the green bezel, which implies that the hype on this piece is dead. Now let's understand why that's the case. Because everyone still loves green, the Hulk is still very much desired. So what's going on with this particular watch? The first thing you wonder is whom this watch is for, because that really should indicate who would find this watch desirable. This one is for the investors. This watch was made to carry the torch of the Rolex Hulk, the quintessential green Rolex. That watch, now still one of the most recognizable Rolex watches of all time. If you ask me, it's the most recognizable Rolex watch. Rolex recently released production numbers in its book about the Submariner, and previously people thought that the Hulk was built to around the tune of 60,000 pieces over its 10-year production run, but that's not the case. There were 228,000 pieces of the Hulk made, and that's a far cry from the 60 that most people were under the impression of. Due to the values dropping across the board, and now the Hulk seemingly a lot less rare than people thought it would be, I think it's become the preferred watch. So even though the Starbucks is the newer watch, the combination of the Hulk being now a little bit more accessible, and also the fact that it's discontinued, the number of production stays at 228,000, whereas the Submariner is still being produced, and there's already been 170,000 or so of the black dial produced. I don't know the division between the green bezel and the non. At the end of the day, it's just a bezel swap and the dials are the same. So there's that other distinction that makes it not as desirable as the Hulk. The discontinuation of the Hulk provides a little bit of reassurance to the buyers looking to get some watch as an investment piece that's also nice to wear. Now, I can't speak of whether there's actually going to be value retention and future desirability with the Hulk, but it seems to be the case for most people buying the watch, and that's the basis on which they buy it. Additionally, aesthetically speaking, the Hulk is a lot punchier. There's a lot more to it because of that sunburst green dial. Furthermore, although the Starbucks remains to be really difficult to get from an AD from Rolex itself, they're still being produced and people do have a little bit of hope of getting one. The watch is also not limited like the Daytona and the Pepsi, which is really still unobtainium. So for those reasons, I think the hype is dead on this piece. And that's really backed up by the prices of the watches. So the black dial Submariner goes around 108, 110,000 Hong Kong dollars, and this one goes at around 115 to 118,000 Hong Kong dollars. So this quite clearly indicates that the Starbucks is not the hype piece that it once was, although it remains to be my favorite green Rolex.